Hello folks, how are you going? Tommy here. This video is going to be a little bit different. Here I'd like to talk about why I chose to deal with H18 bulbs and why I care about D8S xenon when there are more powerful light sources on the market that you can install or retrofit to a headlight. Today I'm having another cup of coffee. This time it's Kimbo coffee from Naples. It's pretty good. I'm going to use some data sheets of all the bulbs that I'll be using. I'll run you through the European legislation as well as some other useful sources with knowledge about automotive lighting. To start with, we need to have a look at the headlamp that I'm doing the project on, and we need to bear in mind that my vehicle that I'm doing the project for came out of factory as a vehicle with halogen headlamps, no xenon. This is a very important thing to have in mind before we go further with our considerations. Okay, so here's the headlamp and there's a label. This label tells us a few things about the light sources and the functions that this headlamp realizes. First of all, there is an E mark on the label. Here it says E3. This E mark says that this headlamp was certified for use in countries where ECE regulations are respected, and the number 3 inside this circle means that it was certified in Italy. Then we have a block of 4 pieces of information about the functions of this headlamp. So this A, 0 to A, means that this headlamp contains a front parking light. This 0, 1, 1, especially this separate 1, means that this headlamp contains a front turn signal. In this block, R means that there is a high beam, and the C means here that this headlamp contains also a low beam. Also, there is an arrow pointing to the right direction just under this HC, which means that this headlamp is meant to be used in right-hand drive countries. As you know from previous episodes, this one comes from an English car. By law, these markings have to be put on a headlamp in an indelible manner. Obviously, this is a label which can be unglued from here. So the manufacturer of this headlamp put also some indelible markings in the form of embossings on the outer shell of this headlamp. But more on that later. So, based on the regulations, the H's in the 00HR and 00HC, those two H's, indicate that the light source inside this headlamp is halogen. And that is the answer why I care about H18 bulb. I care about H18 bulb because it is a new generation halogen. It's more powerful than H7 and is easily installable in an H7 mounting. However, when there is some roadside control or something like that, according to this label, there should be a halogen light source doing the low beam and the high beam. And by swapping the H7 bulb to H18 bulb, I'm not necessarily defining what that label says. In order not to bore you with all of that legal information, there is a great website called Daniel Stern Lighting. I'll put a link in the description below. It's really a tremendous source of knowledge when it comes to all of the markings, regulations, put in a way that is really consumable, because you don't have to read all of those bills and so on from European Commission of something. So here, briefly skimming through this website, there are the lens markings decoded, where you have this E mark and all of those numbers which tell you where a particular product was certified. Then you have some lens function markings, and that's how we know that we have, based on this chapter we have HC, which tells us that is low dip beam headlamp class B, usually halogen or LED. HR, high main beam headlamp or driving lamp class B, usually halogen or LED. We can also have HCR, where in one bulb there are two functions, dipped and main beam, or low beam, high beam, and they operate simultaneously. There is also HC over R, which means almost the same thing as the previous one, except for when you operate the high beam, the low beams are off. Similar thing goes here for the markings starting with D, where D means a light source that is a gas discharge lamp, so xenon lamp essentially. Below you have some description about the arrows that are put on the labels on the headlamps and so on. Very informative source. Please check it out, because that's one of the best websites I have ever found about vehicle lighting. So let's get back to H18 bulbs. Here is the data sheet of Philips about this lamp. Drive with care, longer lifetime, less replacement. Correct, because the expected lifetime of this bulb is 1100 hours and the lumens is 1700 lumens. Yeah, now I realized. I mentioned lumens, but without context. So do you remember when I said that my vehicle was equipped originally with halogen headlamps? It's a very important fact, because this means that my vehicle lacks the headlight washing units and automatic headlamp leveling devices. So why is that so, and why do you have them when you have xenon headlamps or LED headlamps? An answer to this question lies in this document, which is Regulation number 48 of the Economic Commission for Europe of the United Nations. And the title of it is Uniform Provisions Concerning the Approval of Vehicles with Regard to the Installation of Lighting and Light Signaling Devices. Okay, so there it is. There is a chapter called Dip Beam Headlamp, which is an American low beam. What interests us the most is the chapter 626, Orientation and Vertical Orientation. And there are some guidelines on how the manufacturer of the vehicle needs to position the headlamp vertically. And what is more important is this 6262 chapter telling us about headlamp leveling device. This chapter describes a manual way of adjusting this vertical position of the headlight beam. However, there is a chapter 629 that poses some additional or other requirements for the manufacturer with regard to the headlight source and its light output. Here you have a requirement. Dip beam headlamps with a light source or LED modules producing the principal dip beam and having a total objective luminous flux which exceeds 2000 lumen shall only be installed in conjunction with the installation of headlamp cleaning devices, according to Regulation number 45. Moreover, with respect to vertical inclination, the provisions of paragraph 6262.2 above shall not be applied for dipped beam headlamps with LED modules producing the principal dip beam, or with a light source producing the principal dip beam and having an objective luminous flux which exceeds 2000 lumen. What this basically means is that if your car has LED headlamps, it needs to have automatic headlamp leveling unit, and when the light source that is mounted inside of your headlamp, its luminous flux exceeds 2000 lumens, then the headlamp needs to be both equipped with headlamp leveling device and a cleaning device, so some sprinklers or washers. Okay, so getting back to this data sheet of the H18 bulb, we have 1700 lumens, which is perfectly fine for this project and doesn't require me to install any automatic leveling or headlamp washing units. On the other hand, when we look at a data sheet of this bulb, here's the data. The luminous flux, or the lumens, are 1500, and the lifetime is up to 450 hours, so it's less than half of what the H18 bulb offers. Okay, so I mentioned that the markings have to be put on the headlamp in an indelible manner, and this is a label. So where are the indelible markings which have to be on the headlamp? The first set of them is here on this black plastic piece. It's somewhere around this edge. There is a row of those inscriptions. However, this thing is also removable. As you can see, there are a few screws around the perimeter of this headlamp, here, 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 and here. And this element can also be easily removed from the headlamp. Okay, here's another set, this time perfectly indelible from the headlamp itself. I cannot disassemble it anymore without cutting it or anything. And there are also several markings on here. And let's have a quick look on them. It says E3, some numbers, there is this right arrow, so right hand drive, and also HCHR01102A. Everything like it was on the label. However, there is one more marking that we didn't see previously. It's 00DC/R. And oh wait, this headlamp was a halogen headlamp, wasn't it? However, this headlamp comes in a xenon variant, and the manufacturer decided to include all of those markings on the headlamp unit, and they decided to specify the variant by using the label and include all of the markings on the plastic or polycarbonate housing. So yeah, there is this DCR marking. So this one is an answer to why I care about the D8S xenon, because for some unknown reason this label may be gone missing, and the only marking on this headlamp would be this one, which says that it is perfectly designed by factory to use xenon headlamps. But why D8S and not some more powerful unit like D1S, D2S, D3S, D4S? Why D8S? Let's have a look at the datasheet of that D8S bulb. Here's the datasheet. It's a Philips D8S datasheet. I know I'm using Osram bulbs, but essentially the legal requirements for both of them are the same. And here are the specs. So the lumen count on this one is 2000 lumens, which is perfectly hitting the limit of the vehicle not being required to have automatic headlamp leveling and headlamp washers. 2000 lumens, which is greater than H18 bulb, but at the same time it still fits into those less demanding requirements. Okay, so please don't get me wrong here, because both of these mods, so H18 and D8S, both of these are not approved by the law, because headlamp wasn't designed to have them in there. And if somebody wants to make an expertise and, you know, try to find some discrepancy after some collision or something like that, and put the blame on you because you had some wrong headlamp equipment, they can do it surely, because after all, you can find the documentation that this particular car came out of factory with only H7 and D1S bulbs in the xenon version. And these are just improvements, just some fun, and please bear that in mind. But following those requirements that are inside those ECE documents, following the markings on the headlamp itself, that's how you can make your modification or light improvement project less detectable, and essentially it follows the rules because you don't have the automatic leveling equipment or you don't have headlight washers, so you cannot use a regular xenon bulb which is 3200 lumen, not 2000. So I think it's fair to be that way and not to exceed those limits. So with these two guys, I believe that you're good to go with improving your headlamp situation. But please remember, if your headlamp does not bear those xenon markings, the greatest thing that you can do to your headlamps is just putting those H18 bulbs, because they're halogen. So H stands for halogen, D stands for xenon, like D8S, you know. So I'm in this good situation that this headlamp has those markings. Previously I thought of just buying genuine xenon version of the headlamp because I thought that only that one contains that DCR marking. However, the halogen one has it too, so good for me because it was cheaper, and I need to modify it anyway because the form factor of the new ballasts have a different form factor, different mechanical interface to put the cables through the headlamp cover. So it's good for me that I've made it cheaper. I bought them used. So this is what we're going to see in the next project. Okay, so hopefully now you understand this topic and why D8S. With LED, as we read in the ECE regulation number 48, the headlamp leveling is necessary regardless of the light output. So I think these won't be a part of this project. So I guess that would be it. It's a different material from the other two. But yeah, that's how I want this channel to be. To talk about some technology for you, and hopefully that is interesting to the both of us. Thanks a lot. Cheers.